What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Decided to whip up a little divisional round predictions video. We did have my playoff predictions last week, but things have changed. Some crazy games last week. We only ended up picking 1 out of 3 correctly, so wanted to keep you guys up to date. Of course, I did make these picks already on my podcast, so if you want to hear me go real in-depth, do check out the Fully Inflated Football podcast if you aren't listening already on your podcasting services. Please do hit that like button before we hop in here if you enjoy, and let's get into the business. A little bit of a shorter video here. So starting in order, we're going to go with the Minnesota at 49ers game, and while I talk about these, I'm just going to show you a little Madden footage, really for no particular reason other than just to have something to look at. So I guess you can see who EA predicts to win, but outside of that, let's get to the real football here. Minnesota at San Francisco. The Vikings really showed up last week, played one of their most complete games of the season. That defense really reached what we've kind of said that they're capable of. I've consistently ranked the Vikings as a top 10 team all season, but the thing with them was, can they get home field? Because I don't see this as a team with Kirk Cousins and this offensive line that can go on the road and win 3 straight playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. Well, they've done that once now. Can they do it again? While this offensive line was great last week, we're just 3 weeks removed from a much better defensive line in the Green Bay Packers just whooping them up front. And that is where the story comes here with San Francisco, who we know is an incredibly well-rounded team, probably the best team left in the NFC, obviously being the number 1 seed. But this pass rush, getting D Ford back with that rotation on the D-line, obviously Nick Bosa, this offensive line of Minnesota is going to have their hands full, and I don't know if that vertical passing game with Richard Sherman and Reed back there, I think is healthy for the 49ers. I don't think that deep passing game is really going to open up, especially if Adam Thielen is going to be a little beat up in this game, or if he even doesn't play. So I do think the Vikings offensively are going to find a lot more difficulty in this one than they did against that against that Saints defense. I'm not going to say they're going to get shut out, but I do think offensively they will have some more struggles. Now, I do think the Vikings defense matches up quite well with the 49ers, as good as anyone really could. You've got the edge duo to really match the tackles of the 49ers, and that's going to be a dynamic battle. You've got Mike McGlinchey and Staley going up against Everson Griffin and more notably Danielle Hunter. It's a power matchup. Who wins that could be a key factor here. And then, of course, you've got Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris, a really nice combination of linebackers, safeties who can, not going to say, contain Kittle, but keep him down a little bit. George Kittle will get his, but the Niners love to attack the middle of the field, exploit mismatches as well in the screen game with those running backs. The Vikings have a defense that can match up with that. So there's a lot of intriguing matchups in this game. At the end of the day, the 49ers are at home. I do think that pass rush is going to be a little bit too much for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. I am going to take the 49ers 27-20. So going right with where the spread has this game is a 7-point spread. But that said, I do think the Vikings, if they can hit a couple big plays in the passing game, they might need a healthy Adam Thielen to do that. They could find a way to pull this one out. And I don't even hate taking Minnesota on that 7-point spread if you're here for gambling advice. It's maybe a game that would be best to stay away from. I think more likely than not the 49ers will win this game. But I think the Vikings will keep it pretty interesting. Next up, we've got the Saturday night game. The Tennessee Titans, red hot, heading into the Baltimore Ravens. Have been red hot all season, really, other than the first month of the season. This is going to be another game with some really intriguing matchups because both these teams are run-oriented teams. And we don't say that very often here in 2020 now, but really these two teams more so than anyone want to run the ball and punch you in the mouth, and Ravens do a little differently than everyone. Both these teams as well would love to set up some big play action passes off of the run game. So two fairly similar offenses obviously do it in very different styles. The Ravens with that read option and Lamar Jackson, and the Titans with Derrick Henry, who is playing at the top of his game, just demolishing people in this Tennessee offensive line that is playing just as good as Baltimore or any offensive line in the league. So 2 good running games. You do give the nod to the Ravens as far as their ability to pass the ball in this game, especially when you look at Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill's had his moments this year, but more particularly, I do think the Ravens secondary with some bigger-bodied guys can handle guys like A.J. Green, Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis, more physical receivers. So I do see Tennessee having a very difficult time on offense, much more than Baltimore in this game, notably because Baltimore is the home team in this game. So similar to kind of what we said about the Vikings, I do think the Titans, if they want to have a chance in this one, they're going to have to get a big play in the passing game or a huge pass interference call or something. Get a little lucky with a big play. Maybe A.J. Brown shrugs off a couple tackles. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I do think they're going to need something like that. I think Derrick Henry will be able to run the ball a little bit, but I think Tennessee's going to be looking at about 16 to 20 points, somewhere in that range. And then when I look at Baltimore, I do think that they're going to, have their success as they've had, but I don't think it's going to be like we saw against the Rams and the Jets. I think it's going to be closer to, the Niners and the Bills. I think Tennessee's front, and I talked about this really in depth in the podcast, but I think Vrabel's a smart coach. I think he's going to come with a good game plan. And the nice thing about Tennessee is they have 3 good defensive linemen in Jeffrey Simmons, Jarrell Casey, and Jones to really contain those inside the tackle gaps. They have linebacker play even without Jayon Brown. With Rashaan Evans, they can bring Vaccaro in the box. Pretty sure Woodyard is going to be in there unless he's on IR, but I'm pretty sure he's in there regardless with or without him. I do think they're going to be able to basically force Baltimore to beat them with the dive. And I think Vrabel is going to be smart enough to do that and then put 2 guys on the contain. They have athletic edge guys, Harold Landry, Kameli Correa, to basically say your job is if you are getting red and you are not blocked, sprint at Lamar Jackson. And then they have guys like Kenny Vaccaro, like Logan Ryan, who are good tackling secondary players who can be the second guy on the contain. So if they go with that game plan, I do think they can slow down the read option. I think they have the personnel to do that, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I don't think Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill is going to be able to beat this Baltimore defense at the end of the day, and I do think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to hit enough passes. Even if they do slow down the run, I just think that the Ravens are going to be a little bit too much for the Titans that have been pretty cute this year. But I do think it's going to be close. I don't think that the 9.5 points is a great call by Vegas. I think that this is going to be a lower scoring game, and for that reason, I think that is a lot of points. So this is actually a bet I've made, is the Titans as a part of a teaser with the Minnesota Vikings. So I've got the Titans getting 15 points and the Vikings getting 12.5 or something like that. So I do think both these games are going to be a little closer than Vegas tends to think, but I do think the favorites at home will win and the 1 seeds will advance. Then we move on to Sunday. Seattle at Green Bay. This one's kind of a hot topic as far as what the conversations have been throughout the year, because both these teams have gotten a lot of traction. Now, depending who you ask, Seattle is either overhyped or is kind of a fraud. Personally, I think they're a good team. Russell Wilson just might be the best quarterback in the NFL right now, but their line play stinks. I don't trust their secondary. Their receivers are good. But at the end of the day, their defense isn't all that, and I don't trust their offense on a consistent basis. They do rely on Russell Wilson to make those bang plays, but I just said bang plays. That's the first time I've said that. I don't hate that term, but you guys know what I mean. But I do think that Russell Wilson will be able to do his thing in this game, have some big plays, but ultimately they're going to have a really hard time blocking this Green Bay front that, quite frankly, outside of arguably the 49ers, even maybe ahead of them, are the best pass rush in the entire NFL. Zadarius Smith and Kenny Clark are playing like top 10 defensive players in the league in the last 5 weeks. So at Lambeau, I do think that Seattle's offense is going to struggle. And on the flip side, we talked about narratives and stuff. The Green Bay narrative is that this is the worst 13-win team we've ever seen. And there's some truth to that. This offense is not a traditional Packers offense where Aaron Rodgers comes out and lights you up. They're kind of this Shanahan-ian play action, run the ball, take some shots, and play good defense kind of team. It's a different look Green Bay Packers team. But I do think that this defense for Green Bay is going to have a stellar game in this one. So I do trust Green Bay's defense. And frankly, as much as you want to rip on Aaron Rodgers, and I think there's a lot of cadence to him not playing like his old self. But with this offensive line against a Seahawks pass rush that I don't really trust, against a Seahawks secondary that, as bad as the Packers receivers are, they aren't going to have a massive advantage there. I just think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to make some big plays in this game, and I think they're actually going to have some success running the ball as well. So while it might not be an explosive game, which, by the way, I think the Madden simulation had this as like 42-35, I don't see that happening. I do think that both offenses are going to struggle a little bit in this game. I do think Green Bay's defense, being at home, is going to have a little more success. And I just think Green Bay is going to come away fairly convincingly in this one, 27-16. I think it's a good matchup for Green Bay, and I think this is going to be the end of Seattle's season. And then our last game here, Houston at Kansas City. Houston actually won this game earlier in the year. Kansas City was a much different looking football team at the time, a lot of injuries. And this defense in the first year under Steve Spagnuolo has really come together. I do think the last month of the season, where they were effectively shutting teams out, was more of a result of who they were playing, guys like Trubisky and Drew Lock, but there's something to be said about holding an NFL team to 3 points. This defense has some swagger and confidence to a degree that they didn't really have when Houston just ran the ball all over and let Deshaun Watson play ball control offense against them. So I do think this looks a lot different. I also will say that the Kansas City offense is just much healthier this time around. You got Hill healthy, you've got Mahomes healthy, you've got the offensive line healthy. Kansas City, to me, is hitting their stride, entering the playoffs. And I think this is a day that this offense is just going to light up the Texans defense that just doesn't play with a ton of discipline. So I like Kansas City to win this one in a shootout. I do think that the Texans offense with Watson and those receivers is going to have some success. I don't know if it's going to be enough, though, to match what Patrick Mahomes, with a lot to prove at home against a bad defense, is going to put up. But I think a lot of people are going to be quickly reminded what this Kansas City offense is capable of and set up a really exciting rematch of Chiefs-Ravens in the AFC Championship. So we've got 49ers, Packers in the NFC, and Ravens, Chiefs in the NFC. In the AFC. Not a whole lot changing from my original predictions. The only difference here is the Saints were eliminated, which changes my Green Bay prediction. The rest of these are fairly similar as far as my conference championship predictions from my playoff predictions. So if this holds up, I probably won't be, well, I probably still will do one of these because we got Packers. Niners is different. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like the video, whether you agree with me or not. Let me know in the comments below if you see any upsets this weekend, because I didn't pick any, but I wouldn't be stunned if there are some people picking some upsets here. So let me know in the comments below. Cheers as always, guys, and enjoy the football this weekend. Peace out.